Origi!
Hello and welcome to the Liverpool Way podcast. It's Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025, and the most eventful transfer window in the club's history is finally over. The Reds got the British transfer record signing of Alexander Isak over the line on Monday, while efforts to sign the Crystal Palace skipper Mark Gahey faltered at the 11th hour. The late drama capped an unprecedented few months of incomings and outgoings, and while the record outlay could set us up for years to come, some much-loved players from the title-winning squad departed in the process. I'm Chris Smith, and as always, I'm joined by TLW editor Dave Usher. We also have a special guest making his debut on the pod tonight. It's a man who will potentially have more insight than most of us into the machinations of this window. It's the Merseyside football reporter for the Daily Telegraph, Chris Bascombe. So, Chris, welcome to the pod. How are you feeling after yesterday? Relieved it's all over?
Yeah, I would say that, when it all comes to a conclusion, generally there's a feeling of, well, I'm glad that's done for another year, certainly until January. But certainly in this case, it's been a busy summer for Liverpool. I think it's been particularly busy with Liverpool, hasn't it? You don't normally get these kind of hectic kind of. At one point, it was almost there was a deal seemed to be done every other day, wasn't there? But I think by the end of it all, you kind of just sort of okay, glad that's done really. And those. Well, certainly the big one was got over the line, really.
Yeah. Speaking of the big one, from your perspective, was there really any sort of doubt that one would get done? From our outside perspective, it seemed sort of certain that it would happen eventually. Like, were there sort of twists and turns along the way where you thought, this might not happen here?
I don't think I really thought at any stage beyond that meeting Isaac had last Monday. When Liverpool went to Newcastle, that it wasn't going to get done. I just thought it was just an unsustainable situation from Newcastle's perspective. And I mean, they could have just sort of tried to hold out and just insist to him and hope that it went the way to Suarez when Arsenal came in with that 40 plus £1 bid all those years ago. Mm-hmm. But I think it had just gone so far down the line and the figures were so astronomical. You just kind of felt, this is going, this is heading in the right direction. But, without actually being in the office of Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes, who can actually really know and say with any great confidence, yes, this is definitely going to happen. I don't think anyone could have done that. The Gahey one obviously was a little more complicated after what Glasner said after the match. When a manager is making his position so entrenched, he clearly wasn't on the same page as his owner. I think that's pretty well documented. So there was a bit more complications with that one, but I think it's easy to say now in retrospect, but I always had a feeling really that Isaac would get done for the last 7 days. Whereas with Gahey, it was kind of, I actually do believe it's easy to say this. Actually, it would have been a good bonus for Liverpool to have got that done, but I didn't think the need was so great. I didn't think it was, I think it was more of a disappointment and an absolute calamity that hasn't been done yet. Yeah. There's every chance it will get done down the line. But I think if Isaac had fallen the last hurdle, I think everyone would have been thinking, Liverpool wasted the time there.
Yeah. So how's the last how's the last couple of weeks been for you, sort of reporting on these stories? I mean, we've been all sort of refreshing social media, constantly looking at the forums, looking for any hint of things that are moving in one direction or the other. Like, you've kind of lived it in a slightly different way to us. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience of reporting on these quote-unquote sagas?
Well, it's the way the transfer window is now and the way the reporting has gone now. I think there's this kind of romantic idea, isn't it, which I don't actually think was always strictly true, where Liverpool would just almost have an unveiling, a player would magically appear behind a red curtain and no one knew about it before. And I don't think it was ever quite like that. I mean, I don't go that far back in time, but certainly what I do think was true is that when deals were sort of mooted, they tended to be done probably quite quickly over a few days, maybe. Very rarely did you get these long, protracted, sagas. And there's so many elements to as to why that has happened. You've got so many entourages and representatives now, and quite frankly, I probably shouldn't necessarily say this in my profession, but I do find a lot of it quite grotesque. I do. I find a lot of the way it all operates now. There's such a commercial element to every angle of it. It's almost information is so kind of commercially valuable to somebody somewhere that, it's like trench warfare now, a transfer story. People just wanting to edge it along just that little bit. And, supporters are just lapping every single bit of it up. But really, there are only... when it comes down to these transfer stories, the big story that breaks is the one that says the club is actually making formally a proper move for this guy. You can fill all the gossip you want with players who are getting looked at, who've been scouted, and there's always, it's good information and it makes good stories. But really, once the club makes its formal move, then it's really. That's a big story. That things are really moving on there, and when a bid's going in and all that. And then it's just a question of whether it's going to happen or whether it's not going to happen. And everything that happens in between creates a bit of a soap opera.
Yeah.
But we live in a world where soap operas are very popular. So, and I'm as part and, guilty as contributing episodic, moments of these soap operas as anybody. That's because that's your job. So can't be too hypocritical about it. But, I suppose, so to answer your question, what's it like? I suppose it's just the same as reporters. You're just constantly trying to gauge between, trying to find the latest update and not, frankly, just being a complete pain in the arse to people who you've known for many years and who you trust implicitly. And, in terms of deadline day, it's like, you just keep on asking the same question every 20 minutes. And I'm sure some people do. But I think we live in more of an WhatsApp world these days. You put your calls in frequently, and then wait for the WhatsApps to sort of tell you, yeah, okay, something is imminent or something you can report. But this is just the 24/7 news cycle we're in now. It's and there's an appetite for it, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. I think. Each transfer window becomes increasingly more challenging, and as the volume of cash coming into English football increases, and I use the word grotesque, and I think a lot of it is grotesque, to be quite honest with you.
When did it become clear to you that Liverpool were going to go this big? Because for years and years, you always hear this well-trotted out line about them having a war chest for the transfer window and that stuff, and it's never really materialised, has it? But it certainly has this time. Like, did you get a sense sort of towards the back end of last season that they were really planning something like unprecedented here, or did it come to a bit of a surprise to you?
Yeah, I think there's a few of us did report towards the end of the season. It was when the title was won or just before. That it was going to be a very proactive summer, and I think there were different ways of interpreting it. I mean, I think in some manner it could have been presented as, it was going to be busy, as in lots of ins and lots of outs, but not necessarily the level of expenditure. I did use a phrase, big summer, but I think Virgil van Dijk may have used it first, actually, in a press conference, in an interview, post-match interview, and I think that made a lot of people kind of take note then. And I did hear, really, probably around April time, that somebody told me, don't be surprised if Liverpool spend £100 million on a player. But, that was caveated along the lines of...
Twice.
Yeah, I didn't think twice, I have to say. I certainly didn't think Liverpool would break the record twice. But it was caveated with, the reason they'll be doing this is, A, because of the inflation of the market now. A £100 million player now is probably the equivalent to a £50 million player even 5 years ago. And also, there was clear that certain players were going to be moved out if possible. Which had happened. The players that were mooted as being for sale were sold, and so no, I did, and then I know that people roll their eyes up at that because even though I try to spend as little time as possible nowadays, I'm trying to wean myself off social media, certainly off X anyway. I'm on the other one, Blue Sky, but I think when I wrote an article saying this could be the biggest Liverpool transfer window Liverpool have, which I think was either April or May. That was getting absolutely hammered in some quarters. We've heard it all before. I don't know whether they did it from me. I have to say, I've always kind of tried to be pretty circumspect and probably more cautious than most in terms of trying to say what Liverpool are going to do and trying not to report anything that I don't really believe to be 100% kosher, So, I mean, I certainly said Liverpool would have a big summer, and I named a couple of potential targets, but I never said with any authority, this is what they are definitely going to do. I did reference some of the players they end up signing as players who knew they admired, but it's a long way from putting bids in, a long way from getting the deals done. So, I don't know how that answers your question much, Chris. I mean, I kind of just think, I think it was kind of felt that there was going to be work to be done on the squad, even though they'd won the league, especially with Trent leaving as well. He needed to be replaced. But don't believe anybody imagined it would be both Florian Wirtz and Alexander Isak coming in the same window. Nobody predicted that.
I wanted to ask you about that because I think it will probably be in around April, and we were talking, and you did mention Isak then, so keep an eye on that. There was talk. I think you said he was keen on it. Like that was the word that was doing the rounds. But Wirtz just seemed to kind of come from nowhere. Like there was no real talk about that. Isak had been mentioned, but there was nothing about Wirtz. That was one of those. I'm not saying it was done within a few days of it being mentioned, but it came out of nowhere, and then it did happen within, I don't know, maybe like a week, 2 weeks, something like that. But when did you hear about that one?
Well, to be honest with you, the Wirtz one was funny, really, because it was all kind of felt he was nailed on to go to City as Kevin De Bruyne's replacement, and it was just everyone just presumed that was going ahead, and I certainly never thought Liverpool were in the market for Wirtz at all. And really, it was the day City announced out of the blue, really, that they were stepping away from a deal. And it suddenly became, hang on a minute, there's certain elements to that. I won't go into too much, but I know that a story had been running for a long time, about 12 or 13 hours, about City making them ready to make a move of it, and then there were efforts to sort of diminish the accuracy of those stories, and those stories were actually accurate. But then, so there was a moment in the day where somebody at Manchester City decided that they wanted those stories rubbished, but there was such a long gap between the publication of the stories and the attempts to diminish them. You started to smell a rat, and then a few of us were sort of thinking, I wonder if something's going on here. And I think it came out in Germany first, didn't it? I think one of the German reporters suggested that Liverpool were now in for Wirtz. And Liverpool were playing it down. But at the same time, they were playing it down in such a way that he made you think, I'm not sure they're playing it down that strongly here, actually. I wonder whether they're playing it down just because it's too premature. They don't want to be seen to be made going big for him because they don't know whether he wants to come yet, or whether they were, genuinely not in for him. But obviously it wasn't the latter, was it? And then as the days unfolded, then it became obvious, okay, the word comes back. Yeah, if you were to report that Liverpool are interested in this player, it wouldn't be denied, kind of thing. And away they went. I mean, obviously, I certainly did not break the Florian Wirtz story, and I would never come on here and be one of those that would ever claim I broke a story I didn't break. I didn't, and but I certainly, once it was obviously we were going for him. I was as informed as others as to what the state of play was, and they got him in the end. But the Wirtz one, I agree with you. It was completely out of the blue to me as well. Really, when it happened, the Isaac one, I knew Liverpool were very much interested in it, but I wrote in the paper in the Telegraph the chances of getting them were very slim, which I think at the time Liverpool thought it was. They didn't think it was very slim. They knew it would be very challenging to get Alexander Isak out of Newcastle, and it was very challenging
until he went on strike, and then that kind of
there were lots of
greased the wheels a bit.
Yeah, he had to basically go to war at Newcastle to happen, and I don't think anyone could have predicted how far he would go to get out of Newcastle and come to Liverpool, which obviously is terrible for Newcastle, but Liverpool celebrate now. But as we could have many discussed, they've but for the grace of God go. Liverpool have been in this situation before with some of their own players trying to get out, and it's not a very nice feeling. So I don't think we should be overly celebratory for how it's happened personally. But I think obviously when a great player signs for your club, it's difficult not to be excited.
Just on that note, I wanted to ask you about the Mark Gay thing, because obviously we only know what we've read from different people. So I'll tell you what we've read, and then is this what you're hearing or what? So the way it was reported in some places yesterday was that deal was all done. Well, we know this part of it's true. The deal was all agreed. He'd had his medical. There's some reports that he'd posed for photos in club gear and everything. All of that was all taken care of, and they were just waiting on that final sign-off from Palace once they got their replacement in. And then it seems to be that Glasner wasn't happy with the replacement who they brought in, which was the lad on loan from Brighton, who ended up then going to West Ham. Now, there was one report that Glasner said to him, as long as I'm the manager, you're not going to be starting. And that was why he said, I'm going to West Ham. Now, don't know if that's true or not, but what does seem to be true is that he then threatened to quit if Gahey was sold, which left the chairman in an awful position, really. He's either got to piss off his captain by denying him the move, or he loses his manager, and then he's got to find a new manager going into the season. So how much of that is accurate to your knowledge?
Well, my colleague Sam Wallace has written on this in Telegraph today, and I know his info will be spot on. He certainly hasn't mentioned anything about Glasner telling. It was Julio Igor, wasn't it, the guy he was trying to get from, about Glasner telling him, I won't play yet. I don't know about that bit, but I think it's certainly indications that Glasner was ready to walk away if he didn't get his way. I have heard it that Mark Gay's pretty furious about the whole situation. I mean, why wouldn't you be? But I mean, I think what I find interesting with the Glasner, he's only got a year left on his own contract, so maybe he should sign a 4-year deal and show some commitment to Palace, But it's. I mean, I don't know the inner workings of Selhurst Park. I do know that up until it seemed about 10-7 last night, there was still a tentative hope it was going to happen. And even when the papers went in at 7 o'clock, technically the deal sheet went in. So technically they had 2 hours for Palace to still change their mind. But obviously the ship had sailed long before it became, I think it was about 7:30, wasn't it? That everyone sort of knew then it was off. It was completely off. So, but it just shows you, how eager Mark Gay was. I mean, I think a lot of people said today it's a shame really that a lad who's probably, gone about it, if you say the right way, whatever the right way is hasn't got his way. And those who've taken the nuclear option have got exactly what they wanted. And what that tells us about the advice these people get. Everyone who says, he's been badly advised, and you have to send them, was he?
I know.
Was he? Who's been badly advised?
We might not like it, but the advice actually it paid off, didn't it? And
exactly.
That's what's so sad about all this is I was on the pod after the Arsenal game, and I thought both deals were going to go through, so I was making the comparison about I used the Klopp quote about it's not what people think when you arrive, it's what they think when you leave. Isak leaves Newcastle as public enemy number 1, the most hated man on Tyneside. Mark Gay would have left Palace with the best wishes of everybody. Thanks ringing in his ears. There was but the fans, his teammates, even the owner, everyone will have thanked him for how he's conducted himself throughout the whole thing. He's played in all these games. He played in the qualifying match to help them get into Europe. He could have just sat back and said, I'm not playing until my future's resolved. That's what loads of other players have done. I don't just mean the ones who've gone on strike either. I mean, there was players who didn't play at the weekend because there was uncertainty over whether they were still going to be there. So Villa's keeper, for one thing, he didn't play, did he? Because there was rumours he was going to United. Didn't happen, still at Villa, but he missed that game while it was getting sorted. Mark Gay played and scored for them. So he's done everything that you see all the ex-pros on the telly and they're ripping into Isak and saying there's ways of doing things and I would never have done that. And so Mark Gay's done everything that everybody says you should do. And look what happened to him at the end of it. If he'd have refused to play in the European qualifying matches and said to, just kicked up a stink and said, like, I want to leave, I'm not playing at the weekend. If he'd have done all that, he'd probably be a Liverpool player now.
Well, yeah, all the precedents would suggest you're right, yeah. And I'm sure he'll talk about it himself. One day his experience of what happened, but I suppose if he gets his move in January, it could still have a happy ending for him, and he'll still leave Palace as a legend, But alternatively, if he gets a nasty injury, you shouldn't say, you don't want to tempt fate or anything. But things can happen, or somebody else comes along who's. Actually, I think Liverpool are the kind of club now, he'd probably be quite loyal to if Gay still wants, has his heart set on coming to Liverpool. And we know Liverpool have got a track record for getting the right player, not just any player. And if they've now all their data models and all their, analysis tells them Gay is the one, Gay will still be the one in January, So it's not, I don't necessarily think it's the end for him. But it is. But I don't know whether it's like anything new, really. I just think that the money is now such as well, and the agents' commissions are getting higher, aren't they? You know what I mean? Everyone's after the 10%, and, we've got so many examples. I mean, I look at the Raheem Sterling situation. He's at Chelsea. There's loads of clubs who would love Raheem Sterling, but he clearly isn't bothered about playing football if he can't get the same money he's on at Chelsea. And I know people would say, oh, well, why should he? Why should he take a pay cut to go to Chelsea or to leave Chelsea and go? But I don't know what kind of a pay cut it would be for somebody like him if he'd gone, I don't know, pick a club. I'm sure it would be a good sign for Everton earlier in the window or something. They'd wanted them, or Villa or something like that. But clearly they can't pay the wages he's in the Chelsea, so he's just going to go full year without playing football. And you know what? This isn't new either, because I remember going way back when we were doing the Comp magazine in the Echo in the late 90s, Phil Babb went a whole season not playing football because he didn't want to leave because he wasn't going to get paid.
That was a blessing, though.
But you know what?
Footy fans didn't have to watch
Dave, he I don't care really what he wanted. He appears with Liverpool legends now. Yeah. Liverpool legend who just sat there. We did a big Mickey take of him in the Cop at the time. I remember walking into Melwood and he was reading the Cop. And I just looked up and thought, he's actually reading this. I didn't care. I didn't care because, I just saw it then as a professional footballer. He could get a move. But he obviously is getting good wage at Liverpool and he doesn't want to take a little bit less to play for somewhere else. So he just saw his contract out, and Sterling's doing the same. So, a lot of the ex-players now, I'm not going to tarnish them all with the same brush by any means, absolutely not. But I bet you a lot of these talking and chatting now were up to certain shenanigans when they were players as well to get what they want,
Chris, you mentioned that sort of the job isn't quite what it used to be in terms of the incomings and outgoings. Like in years past, the likes of yourself would have probably been down at Melwood today, that you'd have a chance to talk to Alexander Isak and sort of there'd be an opportunity to maybe ask him what went on. But because everything is so controlled these days through sort of the club's output, and it's so valuable to them to have that content, like, is that something you miss? Like being actually able to report with the people themselves in those circumstances?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think the most famous one of those would have been Nick Barmby. Nick Barmby, when he moved from Everton to now, it was Paul Joyce in the Daily Post broke that story. So Joyce was obviously my rival in the morning, and then, it moved quickly and he signed. But when he signed, back then, the Echo always got the first dibs on the new sign. And I thought I mentioned on my social media yesterday, I remember interviewing Emile Esty in his 4x4 on the day he signed for Liverpool because he was leaving Melwood. He spotted me. He said, yeah, get in. And he was working his sat-nav while I was doing an interview, trying to work out and sat-navs were new then, He's trying to work out how to work it. Sat-nav to get down West Derby while I'm asking him about it, he finally got you from Leicester City. But Barmby was a big one, because Barmby sat there and he answered all the questions about what was then the most controversial move you could think of, going from Everton to Liverpool. And there was no press officer in the room. There was no, or if he certainly wasn't getting involved. And it was truly, I would say, I know people say, oh, the Echo, you were with the club and all that, but it was independent journalism. You could ask them what you wanted. You ask the hard questions. And I don't want to sound like, I don't want to sound like these old geezers moaning. I mean, it's just different now. I'm not saying it's better or it's where it was better then, and it was, say information has a value, doesn't it? So if you're the official website, you know, the first interview with Alexander Isaac is worth a fortune, isn't it? It's going to go, must have gone to hundreds of millions of people. They're not going to give it to one, you know, other journalist who will then alienate the rest of the. And of course, the broadcast broadcasters paid 6.7 billion quid, so they're first in the queue as well, because you're not going to, you know, much as I'd like to be there with Joycey and, you know, Andy Hunter and all those who've been doing it for years to get the first interview. You know, the Sky and TNT, and we go, hang on a minute, we just paid you 6.7 billion quid. You're going to give it to us before you give it to them. So that's just the reality of it. You know, there's no moaning about it. That's just a question of whether you want to still be considered a, you know, an independent journalism, even if it's journalist, even if you're waiting for a, you know, an established title, as I am, or you want to sort of become part of the club media, which is, you know, I'm sure they have their own frustrations as well, you know, in terms of, I can write what I, look, if Liverpool get hammered for the next 5 games, I can write what hell I like about Liverpool, can't I, without any fear of, you know, they could probably remove my credentials of getting in the, if they won, but I don't think they would, and, you know, but, you know, you can...
Forest might.
Yeah. But it's a long time since I was banned. It only happened very briefly, and always forgiven very quickly. So no, I've not been banned from Liverpool for 2 decades, I don't think. So
nice. Dave, we spoke on Sunday about whether we got those 2 deals over the line, whether you consider it to be a good or a great window. It's past now. One of them did, one of them didn't. So how are you feeling about it overall now? Like, what's your overall view of the business that we've done, and whether we're stronger or weaker? I know you had some doubts over that previously, so fire away.
So I'm just in the middle of writing something actually for the Copite, which is the Norwegian Supporters Club magazine, on this subject, and I've gone with a 8.5 out of 10 rating. It would have been a 9 if we'd have got Gahey, and it would have been a 10 if we'd have got a Diaz replacement. So mildly concerned about not getting a Diaz replacement. Little bit disappointed that we didn't get the centre back, but I'm not really that bothered about that, because I'm convinced he'll just do that in January. So it's just a case of hopefully, like, we don't get a injury crisis at the back between now and then, and we should be okay, because I just don't see any reason why they wouldn't go back in and do that deal, as long as Chris said, as long as Gahey doesn't get a bad injury in the meantime. So I'm not bothered about I'm more bothered for the player himself than us not getting him at this point, because I do think that will just get done. The Diaz replacement's a weird one for me, because it's not like we've just missed out on somebody like we did with Gahey, where he's the Quansah replacement, if you like, and we didn't get that. But we tried, that there was a plan there. The Diaz thing, it's like they just not even... They don't see that as a concern at all. They were quite happy to just move forward without one. I think that might be a little bit problematic, if we get an injury or two in the forward line. But take that aside, I mean, in terms of the players that we have brought in, it's pretty spectacular if they've just gone out and just got, like, who's the best player in this position, who fits in, like, the age bracket and stuff as well. I'm not saying you go and sign, like, a 29-year-old or whatever. They've gone, okay, like, all factors considered, availability, age, and who's the best we can get, and they've just gone out and got the best. Frimpong was the obvious choice as, like, an exciting attacking right back. I mean, he would have been probably number 1 on most people's list. Kerkez was the best left back in the Premier League last year. Okay, he's had a couple of little hairy moments so far, but he's 21. That's you're going to get that. But that's a player who, if he is what we think he is, well, you've got your left back for, like, the next 10 years. So those are, like, big time moves that we made. Then Wirtz comes pretty much out of nowhere, a player who every club in the world would want. We got him, and we paid massive money to get him. So that's, like, you're really excited about all of that. Then you bring in Ekitike, who, again, he wasn't cheap. They've spent a lot of money on a player with, like, a reputation as, like, he might be the next one, like the next Isak, if you like. And then obviously they get Isak as well. We signed the Italian kid who none of us have got a clue, like, how ready he is. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? But he's just been called into the full Italy squad. And Italy tend to not be short of defenders. It's like a strength of Italians. Well, he's in the squad, so they obviously think highly of him. So that's a sign of who you can get excited about, even if he doesn't play much now. you still look at that and think, well, that potentially could be a great signing. But yes, they've just gone out and and signed like the best player that they can get. I'm not including Leone in that. Obviously, he's one for the future. But in terms of what we needed now, they've just gone out and just gone like, right, who's the best? Let's go and get him. So, I mean, that we're not used to that. And I wasn't completely thrilled about the Isak thing because I feel like that's not who we are. It's not what we do. Ekitike is exactly what we've done and been successful with. Whereas, as I say, he's like the next one. That's what we've done. We've not gone out and bought the established 25-year-old superstar for massive money. We've gone, okay, who's the 22, 23-year-old who's going to become that? Let's get him in for half the price. And we've had great success doing that. This summer, we've kind of done both. So it does take a little bit of getting used to. And the Isak thing, as I say, I did have reservations about it, which grew with the way he acted. I'm actually prepared to just completely dismiss his actions now based on what happened to Mark Gay. I'm like, well, how can I sit here and be saying, oh, don't like what you've done there, Isak, that's not the way to do it, when it actually is the way to do it, because if you don't do that, you're running the risk of the move falling through. So I think I need to just change my mind on what's appropriate and what isn't.
I think it is sad to say, but I think if he hadn't done what he done, he wouldn't have got the move, would he? I mean, you get this phrase, don't you? There's if he'd have handled it the right way, you often wonder what is the right way.
Yeah.
For a player who wants to leave a club to leave, because I don't think one exists. Because I mean, I was kind of saying this a little bit with the Trent situation, to be honest. I don't know, we may disagree on this. I don't know, but I mean, a lot of people saying, the way Trent's gone about it, and seeing down his contract and all that, and he made out he wants to be the next Stevie G. But I can remember when Michael Owen first got in the team, and everyone knew Michael that one day might want to try it at his hand abroad. And he never disguised it. So that when he went, it was like, we always knew he'd want to do that one day. So, okay, well, so it doesn't really matter when a player is popular or is a wanted goods and the fans love him or they want to stay, keep him. There's nothing he can do to make them happy if he leaves. There just isn't, and that's just the way it is. And I think we can all debate the means and how they do get themselves out when they do and how they do it. But I personally don't think there is any way really of doing it that is going to make everybody happy. And of course the thing on the other one, I mean, I've used this example many times. Everyone always forgets that as Michael was leaving to go to Real Madrid, Danny Murphy had a broken heart because he was told he wasn't needed, and nobody really cared about Danny. It was like, get rid of Danny, we need the Danny money to get Xavi Alonso, so it works both ways as well, So yeah, it is. I think it is just a pretty grubby business sometimes, unfortunately.
Well, just on Trent, I mean, it is a valid point in the sense that if fans who are saying you shouldn't leave, you should stay and all of that, well, I don't feel like as a fan, if you're saying that, I don't feel like you've then got the right to be saying, get rid of this player, I don't want him. So whoever that may be, like, so say Harvey Elliott, for example, like, I love Harvey Elliott, didn't want him to go, but there will be some fans, not good enough, take the money, get rid of him. Well, if that's how you feel, that's fine, but it's really hypocritical to then be saying, Trent, you shouldn't leave.
Well, yeah, I mean, I saw people go, because Trent was from Liverpool, he shouldn't leave because he's from Liverpool. And then you look at the treatment Curtis gets, Curtis Jones, who by the way, I think has been absolutely fantastic in the last two games. He was the best player at Newcastle, and he come off the bench and he was absolutely outstanding against Arsenal. But he just can't seem to win people over, can he? I mean, he just can't. And he's now the lifeblood local boy in that team, who to me, and I've written this. I wrote this when I was at the Echo. I have a complete, natural, total bias towards Scousers in the Liverpool kit, and I do. And I make no apology for it, and I never will, because it's Liverpool Football Club and it's the badge. And to me, it's absolutely vital that there are people from Liverpool working at Liverpool and in the Liverpool team, as long as they're good enough, And so somebody like Curtis Jones, I'm completely biased towards him in the same way all those years ago was for Cara, when he was getting a bit of stick. And it sickens me sometimes, the stick he gets, because I think he should be cut much more slack. I think he does get, far more stick than he should. And sometimes I think it's just because he didn't cost any money. He's not the big, we'd have signed him from RB Leipzig as a 17-year-old, and he'd gone to some of his performances. People would have been raving about him. And that's not to say he doesn't have bad games. I think he does, but I think when he has a poor game, he seems to get a lot more criticism than he deserves. And when he has a good game, nobody seems to mention it as much.
Do you think perhaps that some of the local lads, in terms of the feedback they get locally, they perhaps get like a harder time because more is expected of them, or the standards are higher, or what do you think it is? Why do you think that?
I don't think it's been any different.
Standard?
I don't think it's ever been any different. I think when the local lads who come in at the ground running immediate, like Robbie and Michael and Stevie, they probably may argue otherwise. I don't know, but I don't think they ever quite got the same levels of stick as somebody like Harrow when he first got on the side, and Curtis probably does now, and I can probably name a few others off the top of my head. I can't, I'm sure we could have you could probably do a whole podcast on this, couldn't you? The whole academy player situation. I don't think it's just unique to Liverpool, by the way, either. I mean, I've covered a lot of Everton, of course, as well, and I think some of their local boys have had terrible stick over the years as well, and it seems to be a curious kind of thing, really, as to why that should be. But I don't know, and I think maybe, a lot of it does stem, it's a different world in terms of teams are global now, and I do think there is a little more excitement when, players are coming from overseas, a bit more exotic and that, which is fine. I'm not trying to do this with goal players who come into the club. I just kind of think that maybe I just naturally put a protective arm along, over the lads who come from the academy and go into the team, because I think it's so incredibly hard to play for Liverpool or Everton. It's very few who've played over 100 games for Liverpool who were born from Liverpool, and when somebody can do that, it should be celebrated.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And Chris, I'll ask you the same question that I asked Dave. Like, from a fan perspective, how do you rate the window?
Well, it's always a funny question, when you say, people say, somebody had a good window. I kind of almost think it's like you're rating who's done the best Christmas shopping. I'd like to, I'd like to see how good the gifts are and how they, if they're in working order before I really judge. I mean, purely on the basis of, would you want Liverpool to have signed these players? Yes. Have they sort of gone above and beyond what you would have expected? Yes. Does it mean that they're all going to be any good? Well, no. So maybe the only judgment of who's had a good window will come, in May, when we'll see whether Liverpool have collected more points, whether they delivered more good performances, how far they got in the Champions League. I mean, Liverpool are being judged at such an incredibly high level now. The bar is set so high. But yeah, I mean, as of today, we take a straw poll Liverpool. I don't think there's many unhappy Liverpool supporters. I mean, somebody did reply to me and say, not so fast, when I said, Operation Big Summer done, because Gay's fallen through with us. So we're judging, it's a bad window now because Gay didn't get signed, Come on. Mm-hmm. So, but we could name a few clubs who claim they had great windows or won the transfer window in the past, and then they just
Everton, it's a running joke about Everton winning the transfer window.
So I'm going to reserve judgments on how great the window has been in terms of what it means on the pitch until I see a few more games. But off the pitch, I think it's a reflection of what a fantastic state, the healthy state the club is in, and they've come a hell of a long way since 1997. I started covering the club, and half the employees were waiting in Tina's guest house opposite Anfield Road, or not half of them, but a lot of them were. It's a completely different world, a completely different club, and it's a very exciting time, I think, for anyone to be part of this generation of following Liverpool Football Club, because to borrow a phrase, you haven't had it so good.
Yeah. Dave, I think one of the things that stands out to me, even before this window was completed and we signed Isaac, just the sort of the sense that people from outside the club were calling it a formality that we were going to go on and retain the title now. And I read a piece from Phil McNulty on the BBC website today, and it said Liverpool's record-breaking summer has surely made the title a formality for those cunts. Sorry, that bit was edited out. But I don't really.
You're talking about a friend of mine, Chris. Leave him alone.
I know. I know.
He's always been very, very impartial, professional.
Yeah. I agree. That whole incident is funny, though. but Dave, do you I don't feel like this has made it a formality. No. I still think it's going to be very, very close, and I don't like that sense from outside that anything other than a romping to the title is going to be considered a failure now.
No, I mean I tipped us to win it, and I'm sticking with that. But it's not a formality. I mean. Yeah, we've made all of these new signings, but they've still got to bed in. We've seen the first 3 games results incredible, getting wins in games where it looked like we probably weren't going to win. That's a really nice habit that we've got, and it's an ability to be able to do that. But in terms of the performances, you can see it is going to take a bit of time for certain things to click, and Isak's not just going to come in and just start banging in goals from day one. He's missed all of pre-season. I know he's doing his own private training and stuff, but it's not the same. And everyone talks about the intensity of our play and the training sessions and all of that. You come in and you've not got the same base level of fitness as everybody else. It's going to take a bit of time. So I think we're fortunate in the sense that Ekitike's playing and he looks really good, but he's not capable of doing 90 minutes at the moment. He's running out of gas around 60, 70 minutes. Well, it's ideal because Isak's not going to be able to play that long, so you can be bringing Isak on for when Ekitike runs out of gas. So that's a good thing, but you want to get him in the team and linking up with Vert, and you get all of that, the 2 full-backs as well. One of them's out injured, so it is going to take time for everything to click the way we want it to, so I don't think it's a formality, because we could easily have dropped points in any of these 3 games that we've had so far while we're figuring it out. Now, the great thing is we haven't dropped points, but we could have done. So there's no reason to think why the next few games it might be the same, only we might not get that last-minute winner or whatever. So it's not a formality, but I do think we are rightly so that we should be favourites.
Cara made a good point in his column today that you go back to the 87, 88, one of the all-time great Liverpool teams, one of the greatest teams ever to play in England, and then they bring Rushy back for a club record fee, and you're just thinking, well, Ian Rush in that team with Barnes and Beardsley and Out and Aldo obviously end up losing his place, and we didn't win the league. The next, it was like Arsenal won the league, so everything can look great on paper, and you just think, oh, it's just. Put them together and away you go. But there's a big, there's still a lot of work to be done on the training field. There's a lot of coaching to be done. There's a lot of tweaks to be made. Yeah. I think the beauty of what Liverpool have done now is, how Slot likes to tinker, and he likes to tinker mid-game as well. I think he's really opened up the possibilities for changing formations quite a lot, and just really confounding the opponent a lot more, and being a bit. I'm not saying Liverpool were predictable last year. He did make some big moves in certain games like City away, but I think he's got the option to make even more moves now, and I think we've probably only seen a little bit of how clever Slot is as a coach. He's so like Rafa. He really is like Rafa, but in a kind of, I don't want this to sound derogatory really, because Rafa was very able to repel the opposition. He could analyse to death the opponent and know exactly what they were going to do, and he could nullify them. Whereas I think Slot is almost exactly the same, but it's to sort of open them up a bit more. I think he can analyse to death the opponent, and it's just about different ways that we're going to expose them and get at them. And I think we've got a lot more to see from him as a coach.
Mm-hmm. So on that, because I mentioned the other week about is there potentially I think there might be a plan where you will sometimes see Ekitike and Isak together, but not with Ekitike playing on the left in Gakpo's role. Maybe those 2 up front and then Vert's playing behind them. So the front 2 rather than 3, and then maybe you've got an extra midfielder in or something. Or possibly was the plan with Mark Gay that they might play a back 3? Not every week, but would you think that's something? Because Gay would have been expecting to play. He wasn't going to come to sit on the bench.
I think it was interesting. I mentioned Sam Wallace's piece for us, but earlier there was a reference there which stood out to me that Gay was anticipating he might start playing at fullback. So he might have come into the side as a fullback initially, maybe even just to sort of rotate with Kirkes and Robbo. So that would have been, we'll never know now. That may just be something that was said that might not have happened at all, but it would have been a way of getting him into the team. But as you say, maybe he would have experimented with 3 centre-halves in some situations and used Kirkes and Frimpong as wing-backs, or Conor Bradley, let's not forget him.
I think that's more likely than him playing like left or right, even in a back four. I think maybe...
He's not really known for the 3 centre-halves.
No.
Slot. I don't know whether he's ever done it before, though, and I think he did say to us last year he was very much preference for 4 at the back. But he's beyond that. I think he's very flexible in terms of how he can line up his midfielders and attackers, and I think we'll see a lot more of that now.
So should we have a look at some of the outgoings then as well, because there's been several. Chris, is there one in particular that you think we might miss more than others?
Well, I would have to say Luis Diaz personally. And this is not intended to sound as a criticism, but I think in another world, in another area, it would have been. I think his sale was purely a business decision rather than a football one. I don't think anyone can argue Luis Diaz, the footballer, should not really still be in the Liverpool team. However, with the contract situation as it was, the calculation was clearly made at some point. Should we give him this pay rise he wanted, this X amount, which he's probably, I think a lot of people would have argued he was worth based on the form he's shown. Or, you're giving him a deal and it's going to take him to age 32, 28 to 32. Or would you say, no, we're not giving him that money, we're going to give that money, that salary, to obviously Ekitike. You'd have to say is the replacement for Luis Diaz. And I don't think you can really argue with what they've done, really, because you're getting a 23-year-old whose best years ahead, and we don't know how many years Luis Diaz has, doing what he does. But I think he's missed. I do think at the first 2 games he has been missed. I mean, I think Cody Gakpo's a fine player, but I just think he's something different, which Liverpool do not have, and they've got no like-for-like replacement for him, because the young lad Rio, you can't possibly expect him to do what Luis Diaz done at the age of 16, even though he's had his massive moments already. So they haven't really got a Luis Diaz-like replacement. And of course, the manager absolutely loved Luis Diaz. He played them every big game.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he ever didn't pick him. So that tells you everything. So I think, I'm not privy to this. I'm not privy to the inner workings of what's gone on. We'll wait for the books in 10 years' time. But I would be very surprised if Arne Slot wanted to sell Luis Diaz. I'd be amazed if he would have, if somebody had said to him, right, Arne, it's up to you, do you want to keep Luis Diaz or not? I think Arne Slot would have said, I'd rather keep him. But I think this is where the kind of the balance of power has probably shifted a little bit since Jurgen left, because I think we've seen examples, didn't we, where there were clearly little battles of wills going on, where Jurgen clearly got his way, and at the time you think, yeah, you got to back the manager, and then maybe longer term it wasn't necessarily always the right call. Whereas on this one, clearly the bigger strategy won the day with Luis Diaz. So as I say, I'm sure people would come back and say, no, it's football, it's all related to football. But no, to me that was a business decision, not a football decision.
And Dave, Chris mentioned the sort of the new options that we sort of have for Arne Slot to tweak things tactically a little bit. Luis Diaz would have given us even more of that, because I think especially on Sunday we kind of missed that ability to turn a team around and get them going in the other direction, especially in the first half. Like Diaz could have done for us what Madueke was doing for Arsenal, just be that outlet ball and somebody who could run at their fullback and get us up the other end of the pitch and create space that way. So, I know you were quite surprised that we haven't sought to replace that. Do you think that Ekitike might be able to do a job in that respect from a certain point of view? He seems to me like someone who prefers to drop in a little bit deeper than
I don't think he's going to give us what Diaz gave us at all. He'll give us other things, and this is not a criticism of Ekitike at all, but I just don't think that Diaz. He played a hell of a lot of minutes last season. He played 50 games. I can't remember. I did have a note of this, how many minutes he played, but I can't remember. It was 3,300 or something like that. He scored 18 goals, I think, 8 assists, something like that. He's a massive contributor last season, and you're taking that away. Now, okay, we've brought in other forwards, but we haven't brought anybody in like him who plays all three positions across the front three. He's like, his style of play as well, he's got a trick, he can beat a man, he does unpredictable things, he's a fighter as well, like he'll run himself into the ground, and I feel like we will miss that. And I do think it's surprising that we didn't replace it, going back to what I was saying before. But what I wanted to ask Chris about this is, Paul's been saying, and I think there might be something to it. So Harvey Elliott goes to Villa in a deal which seems very Villa-friendly in terms of the fee, and letting them pay it next year, letting them do the loan now for their PSR reasons. Paul's theory is that we want Morgan Rogers, and that helps to sweeten the deal next summer. And considering that we know that these, like, Michael Edwards, and I don't know about Richard Hughes, but Michael Edwards is obviously prepared. If he wants a player, he's prepared to wait for that player. Now, it might not be Morgan Rogers, it might be Antoine Semenyo, but I think they've got a Luis Diaz replacement, someone who they want to fill that role, and he's not available now. And they're like, okay, we'll make do for now, and then next summer, that's who we're going to get. So Morgan Rogers, Antoine Semenyo, somebody else. What are your thoughts on that? And would that be why they've not replaced Diaz?
Well, not. I mean, I like the theory, but I've heard nothing like that. And even if there's any truth to that, I'm sure they wouldn't tell me that. Yeah, if you send him there and give me a wink, don't worry, we'll be getting one of theirs. It doesn't sadly work like that. But I think. Don't forget this. And I always said, he's still too young, but don't forget Rio. I mean, we don't know how quickly he may just. He's already had this breakthrough moment. I don't think it's going to be this season where he's going to play 30 games for Liverpool by any means. But, maybe, another year or another 2 years, maybe he is just seen as something special.
But by that point, Mo's got to be replaced anyway, so you're still in that situation where you've got to bring someone in.
I suppose you're looking at, with Salah, you're trying to replace his goals, aren't you? A lot of this is so data-driven and metrics-driven, and you go back and watch. You ever go and watch back that scene in Moneyball? Brad Pitt, where he clicks his fingers and tells the fella to explain what you mean by the aggregate. I mean, it's just going to be all about who's going to deliver the optimum amount of goals that Liverpool need to get from A to Z. So it might not be that you need necessarily the same profile of player of Mo Salah, because Mo Salah was a bit of a unique one anyway, because he's a goal scorer and winger, isn't he? Rather than a traditional out-and-out winger. Diaz was more of an out-and-out traditional winger. He didn't really score. He scored in bursts, and he didn't really score sustained, consistently. So no, I mean, there were some names were linked with, the guy, the lad at PSG, but what's his name? Bradley, is it? Yeah. And it was, shot down. Antoine Semenyo. If there's one player I'm surprised, he did not sign, it would be Semenyo. And I think if in a world in which Newcastle convince Isaac to stay, and that's just, the door is completely shut early doors, I think in that world, Liverpool do sign Semenyo. I know they liked him a lot. He
signed a new contract, which was a little bit surprising, but there may be an escape clause in that.
Yeah, he did, but I know they liked him. Well, I mean, Richard Hughes signed him or had him anyway, didn't he, at Bournemouth in the first place? And, when you saw him play that against Liverpool that first game of the season, you just looked at him and you thought, well, he would have been absolutely fantastic for Liverpool. But I know they liked him, and I know they watched him, and I know that they definitely discussed the possibility of signing him. So why it didn't happen, I have no idea, other than they obviously decided if he was on the list, he wasn't top of the list. And, it could well be, again, the Wirtz thing. I mean, the Wirtz thing could have been just one of those things where they've gone for it, and lo and behold, Wirtz has gone, yeah, I'll join you. And they might have gone, wow, yes, he is going to, we are, because there must have been part of them going in for that Wirtz deal, thinking, this is a bit of a, I don't know whether you call it long shot, but it's a bit 50-50 this, you've got City, he's got Bayern, is he really going to pick us? And then during the course of the conversation, it suddenly becomes apparent, I fancy Liverpool instead. So that must have altered a lot of thinking, that 115 million quid or whatever it was would have been going on somebody else if they not got hurt. So maybe Semenyo would have come into the equation then. I'm pretty sure he would have done, actually. So they spend so much on these two players, and that is the big thing that's to be determined, isn't it? When you break it down, we were so kind of like anaesthetised to the huge fees to spend 200 and what is it now? Then 235 million quid is it on two players? I mean, that's a hell of a lot of money on two players when you think about what they could have got. But that's the position the club's in.
It's 300 on three if you put Ekitike in there, because that was a lot of money as well.
I mean, this is the new world we're talking about now, and that's what I agree with what you said earlier, Dave. Like, it does take a little bit of kind of mental kind of gymnastic to sort of get your head around this with Liverpool, because this is not really the world we've been inhabiting in all our lifetime. Maybe it is just the same as going what they did in the 70s when they were signing, breaking records for Kenny Dalglish. But it didn't feel like it was, because even then, you're replacing Keegan with Dalglish. And I know they're still going to throw the net spend errors and the outgoings and all that, but it just feels different because of that. As you say, 300 million on three players for a club that's constantly going about value for money and all the rest. And you kind of, but Semenyo at 50 million had probably been just as good a value, maybe. But
maybe Bournemouth just wouldn't sell this summer because they'd lost other players and they didn't have a financial need to do it. Maybe they've said not this summer, and because I know, like, obviously you're gonna say that, like, after the whole racism thing that Semenyo had to endure at Anfield, but. When Slot was talking about it, and like he really emphasised, he's like, and what a great player, by the way, he's a great player, and I thought, and when he's talking to him at the end, obviously he's going to be talking to him about what happened, but you do think, is there something else there? Is it, because at the time, if somebody had said after the League Cup final, that conversation that Isak and Van Dijk had on the pitch at the end, if someone says, oh, Isak's signing for Liverpool, look at that, everyone would have said, fuck off, you're reading way too much into it, that's nothing. But when you look at that now, there's no way that was not related to this. The way Isak was talking to him, and then Virgil's face, there was something there. I know at the time, like, it's easy to dismiss, but looking back on it now, you go, what was that about? So
the lip reader said at first, stay for one more year, didn't he? Or was it see you next year? Or it was one or the other. And
I haven't seen that, but yeah,
there was a double take from Van Dijk, and now you have to look at it and go, well, he probably did say that.
Yeah, there was a double take and a smirk. And we just lost the game, and Virgil's smirking, which tells you what he said to him there. So looking back on it now, and then what we've seen from like the Newcastle reporters and stuff, they're saying around that time he told Newcastle, I'm going to be leaving in the summer and that. So we didn't know at the time that was what was happening, but clearly, like, he was unsettled and he'd made up his mind he wanted to go. So the Semenyo thing, there may well be something going on there. And that's why they've not addressed, like, replacing Diaz this summer. But I just wanted to quickly ask, was there ever anything in those Rodrigo rumours? Because it seemed to be from Spain. None of yous ever really reported that as there being anything in it.
Well, I can only tell you what it was knocked down to me, or I say knocked down. I was never encouraged to go down the route of mentioning with Liverpool. Now, other people have different information, whether or not, again, whether I was discouraged after they'd asked and found out he wasn't interested, or whether I was discouraged because there was never any interest at all. No idea, to be honest with you. But I never reported Liverpool were in for him, and they never signed him. Again, I think so much has been invested elsewhere now, and then the emergence of Rio could just have been a factor in that as well. Because you don't want to block pathways if you think the player's good enough, even if he's very young. So that's all I can say on that, really. So that was told, so I didn't write anything.
Okay, fair enough.
Definitely. Chris, I just wanted to come back to something you said about possibly about the change in mindset at the club when they realised that Wirtz was actually a goer. In Kara's piece today, which you may or may not have had something to do with as well, he talked about Liverpool being sort of like the new Galacticos of the Premier League. Like, do you think there's a sense now that the mindset of the club is that we really are this, like, on the field and in terms of the market, this sort of biggest superpower in the game.
Well, I think you got to, I mean, I suppose, look, it's a catchy phrase and it makes a good headline, doesn't it? So we used it. I mean, I was toying with I don't know whether I should even say this because I don't want to offend anybody. We were saying, should we call Liverpool the Scalacticos? Would that look on everyone's head? Would we have offended everybody? And then we just thought, forget it. Let's just stick to what everybody understands. But I think what the point he was trying to make is, more comparing Liverpool with Chelsea post Abramovich, that first early flurry of transfer activity. City in that first early flurry when he was signing what was his name, Robinho and stuff like that. And obviously Real Madrid, their idea of a Galactico is probably something even completely different. But in terms of what the Premier League's Galacticos are, Isaac would be it, wouldn't he? I mean, at the end of last season, it's Isaac. And I mean, I think that the front of 4-4-2 wasn't the preview in the season. It's like the two big stars, Salah and Isaac, and now they're both in the same kit. So I think that's the point he was trying to make now. And how long will it last? You don't know, do you? And I suppose that's another big part of this strategy, Liverpool. Even though it's the same strategy on in hyperdrive, it is still, getting the value for money from the market, and it may not be another chance to sort of be able to behave like to basically bully other clubs into selling their best players. These opportunities don't necessarily come over. United were able to do it for years, weren't they? They took Ferdinand out of Leeds and Andy Cole from Newcastle, and it just seemed like when anybody decent came on the scene, ready-made, we'll have him. There you go, and that's what Liverpool. I think that's probably the phrase, isn't it? Ready-made, absolutely. That was what was the difference was with Van Dijk and Alisson. Ready-made, there you go, straight in the team. Don't have to wait. They're going to be brilliant, and you were hoping the same is going to be with Isaac. You're hoping the same with Vert, although he is a bit of a younger player. He's clearly having to adapt a little bit. So I think that's the sea change, isn't it? Because you go to they look like no-brainers now, Mo Salah, Roberto Firmino and Sadio Mane. But if we were to rewind and look at the reactions to each of those deals, nobody had the clue how great they were going to be. In fact, I think the Sadio one was like, well, you're paying so much for a guy from Southampton for, the with Salah, it was he's failed at Chelsea already. Why are you bringing him here? He turned us down once before, Bobby Firmino was playing left wing under Brendan Rodgers. It was a triumph of coaching to turn these great players into world-class legends,
Yeah.
Whereas now we seem to be going down the route of pre-packed, ready-made legends. Here you go, do your stuff. So I think if we're trying to sort of put our fingers on exactly what it is that we're trying to say, we've gone down this Galactico, if you want to call it. I don't think it'll catch on, I have to say, but route. I suppose that's it. I think that's what we're trying to sum up, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And Dave, going back to some of the departures, it's innately it's necessary, I suppose, to have these departures if you're going to make these huge outgoings as well, and just to sort of clear space in the squad. Opportunities have become even more lacking for the likes of Harvey, and he's gone last night now. So I know you and I are both really disappointed about that one. So I just don't know if you want to sum up some of your thoughts on letting Harvey go at this time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting the impression it was probably Harvey, wasn't it? And the reason why I say that is just based on an interview that Mo did the other day. I don't know if you've seen that, Chris, on Sky, and he was talking about speaking to his teammates who aren't playing, and he went, I tell them, just leave. And I was like, fucking hell, he must be talking about Harvey. He's like, if you're not playing, you need to leave. You've got to go and play. And Harvey obviously does not want to leave Liverpool, but it must have been agonising for him. He didn't play much last year. And then not only did they go and sign someone who plays in his position, they signed someone for a British record fee, one of the most coveted players in world football. And he just happens to be younger than him as well. So it's the writing's on the wall. It's like, well, I didn't get any real minutes last year because I couldn't get in the team ahead of Dom, who's not even a number 10. Now they've gone and signed like the best number 10 out there. Dom's already ahead of me as like a second option. So the only way he was ever going to play games is desperation off the bench, because he is a game changer. He's done that so many times for us. But that's not enough. He's got to play, and he was not going to play. And I think Harvey's just taking a decision, like, reluctantly, I've got to leave and I've got to play. So it makes me sad that he's leaving. I never wanted to see him leave. I would have given him a lifetime contract because you know how much it means to him. But it's one of those things. It's just inevitable, really. Sad, but inevitable.
I think it's more a reflection of the quality ahead of him rather than his quality, isn't it? And as you say, it's a great move for him, and he'll be eyeing the World Cup, and why he should be as well. You know, if he does well at Villa, why can't he get in the England squad? You know, so and if he ends up turning it up and proving he can deliver week in, week out. Who's to say Liverpool? Well, they've got a buyback clause, and they've got and if he ends up going for double his price, Liverpool will get money as well somewhere. So, and the best thing, I said this something else earlier today, that I don't think he's going to have forever now. Every time he comes back playing against Liverpool at Anfield, he's going to get an unbelievable reception. And who can put a value on that? You know, there are great players who've gone before him who won't get that. You know, and he will for the rest of his life. And when he reflects on that, it's like it goes back, nicely to what you're saying at the start of this day. You know, it's how you leave, and it's how you leave a club ultimately. And he's going to go down and take a corner at the Cop End one game, maybe this season, and the whole ground's going to stand up, and he'll know then what he did for the club.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose you can contrast that with someone else we expect back at Anfield this year. I mean, Jordan will probably get a polite round of applause. I'm sure the club will do the... Well,
I think Jordan will get. Don't you think Jordan will get a good? I'd be surprised if Jordan didn't. I mean, I
don't think it'll be what it was, Chris. If he hadn't have done what I think it'll be polite and not much more, really.
I don't know. I think maybe if it had been in the immediate aftermath, I think time has moved on so much that I think people will probably afford him a good reception. I don't know. It remains to be seen. But I would be surprised. I would be surprised if he didn't get a great reception when he come back. But
I think so, but I don't think it'll be like a hero's reception. But I think it'll be. Personally, I'll be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna clap him because there's water under the bridge now. But it's not going to be what I think.
In the emotion of the moment of a match, and maybe it'll depend on the situation of the match as well. And if he comes off the bench, if Liverpool 3-0 up, or something like that. I mean, but. I do think in the moment, in the stadium, I think people would just just get caught up in it and go, oh yeah, come on. He's the guy who lifted the Champions League and the Premier League, for God's sake,
What about Trent, though? That's not going to be pleasant for him, I don't think.
I don't think he can be under any illusions, but that's just the way it goes. But that'll just be, as much as anything, a club-to-club thing, isn't it? I mean, Liverpool and Real Madrid are rivals for the Champions League. Real Madrid are an obstacle to Liverpool winning the Champions League. So, Luis Suarez got it absolutely pelted when Liverpool were 3-0 down to Barca in that second leg. And then a year later, he was given a hero's reception for the Legends game, wasn't he? So it's that's just the way it's going to be, because as much as anything, Liverpool desperately want to beat Real Madrid.
It's not personal, it's just business.
Yeah. I wouldn't expect it to be any other way because of that reason. I'd just take out all the stuff about, I think any ex-player. I mean, I don't think Xabi Alonso is going to get a great reception this time. Is he coming back as Real Madrid manager? He's had all that when he was at Leverkusen. I wouldn't expect Xabi to get a good reception as Real Madrid manager, particularly. I wouldn't necessarily, in his case, expect him to get booed by any means. I think it'll just be that kind of, okay, Xabi, you're a Real Madrid manager now. We don't really roll the red carpet out this time,
I wouldn't expect him to have his name chanted, that's for sure.
No, definitely not. No.
Chris, were you misreporting on Darwin Núñez?
Careful what you say.
I have to be careful here. Look, as a reporter, what do you want? You want players. You don't want glasses of water, do you? You want the full cocktail. And you certainly got it with Darwin. I mean, I could write 800 words on Darwin no matter what he did. So, will I miss him? Yeah, I will, because of that. Because if it's a dull game and you're struggling with something to write about, you just look at Darwin doing what he was doing for 5 minutes. You probably get 800 words comfortably, because he was just a bit of a crazy footballer, wasn't he? And probably end up writing too much of the same, really. From sublime to ridiculous. But the great moments were so great. That's why he goes with so much, best wishes. The Brentford away last year, I was at that game. I was covering that game, and that was a huge, huge day in the title race, because that was the day Liverpool were going to drop points at Brentford and Arsenal were going to beat Aston Villa, and the gap was going to be 2 points or 1 point or whatever. And the gap ended up being 7 or 8, I think, by the end of the day or something. It extended to a point where it never got closed again. And I'm probably going to be on slightly different. Do I think that Liverpool have upgraded on Darwin? I think they have, to be honest with you, quite massively. So, but as a professional journalist looking for something to write about, I will miss Darwin.
Who do you think the player in the squad is that's more likely to take up sort of the bulk of Darwin's word count moving forward?
God, that's a good question, that, isn't it? I think Kirk might have a bit on him, mightn't he?
Yeah, he looks like a character, yeah. Yeah,
he looks like he could take. I mean, I'm a bit worried for him in the derby, if I'm honest. I think somebody's going to have to sort of, wind him down a little bit, just to sort of say, okay, let's not go too-footed into early here,
Maybe that's one for Robbo.
Yeah. Who else? Frimpong's a character, isn't he? You can see that already.
TK looks like he might be as well.
Yeah, I could take he could be, yeah. So, there's probably still some room for a bit of character in there, even if, we probably see most of it via their own Instagram and social media these days, don't we? And they're all filming themselves now on the phones, aren't they? So, I don't think we'll get many of them in the old. God, what was it? The old Grafton club that we used to back in the old Echo days, when they had the Delia man in the Grafton. Yeah, there's a story to be told there. Get him on one day.
Dave, speaking of losing characters, we haven't mentioned Kostas yet. I know it's only a loan move, but it's sort of one of those loan moves that really mean this is the end. So, with everything that's been going on, really, I think he deserves a solid mention for what a good pro he's been around the place, and contributed to some great moments himself, including like the winning penalty in an FA Cup final, which, that writes himself into folklore a little bit. The videos and the DVDs we all grew up watching. He gets his sort of Tommy
Kennedy
Smith moment. Yeah, Alan
the
Kennedy or
penalty,
Tommy Smith moment.
No, he was never like first choice caliber player, but as far as backups go, he's pretty much what you would want. He'd come in and he was dependable. He'd do it like a good job more often than not, but he was never really a serious threat to take Robbo's place, and he knew that. That's one of the good things about him, was he knew that. He accepted the role that he had. He embraced it. He was a character. Everyone liked him, and he's another one who leaves with like best wishes, and people remember him fondly just because of like the funny moments and stuff like that. But I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, Robbo's got a year left on his contract, and I think Kostas has got 2. Is that right? Possibly even longer. It wasn't that long ago he signed a new contract, so he's gone on loan to Roma. If Robbo goes next summer, they've either got to buy another left back, or if they don't get an offer for him, they may well say, you know what, you can carry on being understudy. I don't know, but we probably have seen the last of him, but I wouldn't say it's 100%, because it depends on what offers they get, and if Robbo doesn't sign a contract, and it doesn't look like they're planning on offering Robbo a contract unless there's something we're not aware of. But yeah, I'll miss Kostas, but not really because of performances, but just more from like a personality aspect. And he was always like, he always come across really well on all like the inside training videos and stuff. He was always up to something in that. So yeah, he's a character, and we've lost a few of those. We've lost a few of those likeable players who had something about them. So yeah, hopefully some of the new lads can start to show something like that.
And it's not just the character and the funny moments, it's the camaraderie he seemed to have with everybody in the squad. Like, he's everybody's mate as well. Yeah. And you need people like that, the glue guys that sort of tie everything together. So he'll certainly be missed from, more than his contributions on the field, that's for sure. Yeah,
because he was like really close with Mo, wasn't he? Which seems like an unlikely pair, but they always seem to get on really well.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, we've had plenty of ingoings and outgoings. Now we just get to focus on on the football for for a while, Chris. Like, are you looking forward to seeing how it all comes together on the field now?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. So I think that's the more, unfortunately, we've got no football for 2 weeks now because it's internationals. So obviously that doesn't count. So there's always the way, isn't it? You have this great kind of big fanfare for the start of the season. The transfer window comes to an end, and then everything comes to a halt, and everyone pretends that there's a competitive match being played. I think, is it Andorra again they're playing? I don't know. But yeah, I think. I think Burnley is away the next game. I'll be at that one.
Yeah.
We'll be interested to see how it all evolves. I think it is. As I say, a very exciting time because however it evolves, that it's going to be an attacking style of football. It was fascinating watching Arsenal the other day. I mean, it was funny. I was just saying before when I was driving back, I could have sworn I still saw Declan Rice walking towards a corner flag. So, I mean, the way they played on Sunday was just staggering to me. And I did turn to those who follow Arsenal, weekly, and I said, "Is it really like this every week?" And they were nodding, going, "It is." And I was like, "Oh my God." They are so cautious. I can't. When they've got such great players, I think Rice is a fantastic player. I know they were without Saka, but they do not need to play like that.
No.
So, and they might win the league like that, George Graham did, Mourinho did, But so yeah, I mean, at least the one thing you can say. I mean, I think I kind of just judge it really on performance. Really, I mean, Liverpool won the league last year, and look, when it comes down to it, you just so desperately want them to win the league. You'd want them to do well in the Champions League and win it. But ultimately, if they're just performing and you're entertained, and from the fans' perspective, you're getting value for these ridiculously high prices for tickets you're having to pay. I suppose that's probably as much as you can, expect as a minimum. And I do think you're going to get that with Liverpool. That's why I think it's such a great time for the club, because you just feel as though when you go to a game, you just expect Liverpool to win, or you expect Liverpool to play well. And even if they don't win, you think it'll be a good game. Even if they hadn't beaten Bournemouth, it was a great game, wasn't it? Yeah. And that's what the signings they made are just going to enhance that, really. So yeah, tactically, I'm sure many articles can be written about the genius of what Slot's going to do and this and that and the other. But I think just from a pure spectacle, however he plays and whatever they do, I think it's going to be a fun ride.
Dave, you and I talk about this stuff sort of every week, really, but now it's all in the books. Like, what's the most exciting element for you moving forward?
Off the window, or
just into now it's closed, and now all the pieces are assembled.
Yeah, it's just for me, it's still Vert and how when he gets up to speed, and I don't think it's just that. I think it's also the rest of the team have got to figure out like where he wants the ball, where he's likely to be. Because, I mentioned the other day about how he's in space and they're not always getting him the ball. Now, I watched Gary Neville's podcast after the game, and he said that, but he also said, and it was interesting, I hadn't thought of it like this, but he said, I'm watching him and I'm thinking, stand still. Stop running, stop moving about into space, and actually stand there so they can see you and give you the ball. And I thought, yeah, maybe that's something that they need to work on. But they've got to figure out how to get him the ball in these pockets of space that he takes up, because that's where he thrives. And he's been a little bit starved of the ball, or he's been coming too deep to get it. So the thing I'm looking forward to most is when he figures it out, and when they figure him out, and we start to see the player that we know that we've signed. And I'm assuming like once Isak gets up to speed and he's in the team, that link up between those two is going to be huge for us. That's because you spend that much money on those two players. The plan is obviously those two players are going to be the difference makers. I know we've still got Mo, but you've got to plan ahead, and like that's what they're looking at for the future is the link up with Isak and Wirtz. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is Wirtz finding his feet and then the link up between those two, and let's see what we've got.
What do you think this means for Mo this season, Chris? Like, do you think he'll see as much of our attack will be as focused on him as it has been in the last couple of seasons, especially last season, or do you think like he might sort of find himself sort of on the periphery of the attacks a little bit?
I think you just have to wait and see on that one. I mean, age, nobody can defeat age, can they? And I think there's been a few withering comments about the first few games about his performance, but I mean, been tough games, and we've seen him have quiet games before, and he can just go on these runs and bursts, and he'll just bang, 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 and I think we are going to be watching him through that prism now, aren't we? I think had he not signed the deal, I think a lot of people probably would have been arguing, well, it's understandable we haven't given him that money, really, isn't it? Because he's entering that period of his career. Once he signs a deal, it's all okay. This is great. He's going to be like Ronaldo. He's not going to stop. But you're still kind of probably watching him a little bit, thinking, okay, that'll probably be fuel for him. He'd probably be thinking I don't think doesn't strike me as the kind of person who completely ignores everything. To be honest with you, him and his agent, I think they probably do read a lot. So if anyone starts casting aspersions and saying, "Oh, he's showing his age already," he'd probably be used that as fuel, And it wouldn't surprise me if he does score 20 goals again this season. I think we just have to wait and see on that one. I don't know whether or not he is more inclined to accept a role where he may be left out a bit more often. I don't know. I would like to think that was a part of the conversation when he extended. That Slot might have said, look, if we strengthen up there, I might be leaving you out of some games. I might be taking you off a bit more.
We didn't buy anyone in his
haven't
position,
seen any evidence of that yet, have we?
He just ignored that right side.
Maybe Ekiteke could play in the right as well. I don't know. But sometimes these superstar players do not like missing a minute, do you? Never mind not starting. It's definitely one to keep an eye on. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's one to keep an eye on. And look, the one thing that we haven't spoken about, we have to review it again. Clearly he's a guy who was very traumatised by what happened. I mean, that's visible. And we have to cut so much slack to all of the players for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just move on. But it's very difficult for them, I'm sure, to move on. But we just expect it of them. And we are 3 wins out of 3, and it's just away you go, boys. But the reminders are always going to be there, and everything they do is going to be trying to create a memorial for one of the best mates. So we have to keep that in mind as well. Maybe for us, it's always going to be in the back of our mind when we're judging these performances, but it's probably going to be in the forefront of their minds quite a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I've written it myself, obviously to a much smaller audience, but I do think it's really unfair to sort of expect a title win this season, Dave, but to consider it a formality under these circumstances is sort of doubly unfair, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we seen how it worked with the whole let's win it for Jurgen in his last season. For a while, it was on track. It was going well, and then I don't know whether they just wanted it too much. They just seemed to run out of gas at the end, and it all went wrong, didn't it? The last couple of months of the season, but they'll have been wanting to win it for Klopp and give him like the farewell that he wanted. So it doesn't always go the way you want it to, and it's like, oh well, that'll give them inspiration to do it. Yeah, maybe, but it can also weigh heavy, can't it? So I think like the longer the season goes on, the easier it will get. But it is going to be in the minds at various points, and there's always going to be something like an anniversary of like, oh well, this is the day when Diogo scored the winner against Spurs, for example, and so there's always going to be things like reminders. And when we play Wolves, that's going to be an emotional one, and so you don't know. Everybody's different. Some players may be inspired by it and play better, wanting to do it for his memory. Other players, it may weigh on them and it might psychologically affect them negatively. As I say, everybody's different, and they may be fine for weeks, and then there'll be like one particular day when it'll hit them and they'll be like, down in the dumps and stuff. And it's just the way grief affects people differently, and it's going to affect them far more than it affects us. It was bad enough for us as fans. Like, I know how upset I was, but they're with him every day. That's like their mate. It's like, and it's not just the mate. It's like it's different when you're in a team and there's the bond as well. So you've got that as well as just the friendship. Plus the fact he was liked by everyone, and so it's not like, oh, he only got on with a few players and the others won't be that affected. Like everybody really got on well with him, so they're all going to be missing him. And then even new players coming in, it's a little bit awkward for them, because they weren't part of that, but they still know that it's happened and that. And I don't think like you can dismiss the impact that might have, either positively or negatively, I don't know, and it's going to be different for everybody. But I'd like to think that the longer the season goes on, the easier it will get for them. But we saw Mo after Bournemouth. I mean, that wasn't... He spoke about that, and that wasn't planned. He was just clapping the fans, and then at that point, they were singing the song, and that's when it hit him. Because he was there for the Preston game. He was part of that, after the game. So they're probably thinking they've got that out of the system, and then he realises, actually, no, I haven't. So... yeah, it is. It's just it's unprecedented. Nobody's really ever had to deal with this before. Not in this country anyway. Players have been killed at other clubs and stuff in accidents and that. But in terms of English football, there's not really, unless you're going back to Munich. I mean, and if you think about that, fucking hell, we know how bad that was with one player, and they lost most of the team. It's just horrific beyond words to even think about something like that. So there's not really a comparison to make and say, well, this team had this happen to them and it affected them this way. And even if it did, like I say, everyone's different anyway. So we'll just see as the season goes on, what kind of an impact that has. And we won't even know. That's the thing, is if a player's affected by it and he's having a bad time, we're not going to know, because they're not going to come out and say, yeah, he's had a couple of bad games here, but he's really struggling with what happened to Diogo. That's obviously going to be kept totally behind the scenes anyway. So it's stuff that I think we do need to keep it in the back of our minds to be maybe mindful of, and cutting players a little bit of slack. But that's probably not going to be the case, because we're not really going to think that way, are we? You watch a game, you judge the player's performance, and you talk about it, and because we've got no way of knowing one way or another, have we? We can only comment on what we're seeing. But I do think maybe be a bit mindful of it if possible.
Dave, is there anything else that you want to ask Chris? Now we have this the privilege of having him on tonight.
I was going to ask what you think about Konaté's contract situation. Where are we headed with that?
Well, I think it would have been a lot more interesting if Gay signed, because I think, I don't think we were all right last year with the Trent, Virgil and Salah one. Was, you see, if Michael Edwards had been around, this wouldn't have got to this stage, and then here we are, lo and behold, it's a replica with another player, and I think they probably would have liked to have brought it to a head. I think he's got to have to carry on, alongside Randall. There's no other real option. I mean, obviously Joe Gomez, as long as he can stay fit, is a good option there. But ideally, it's going to be Konaté and Van Dijk, certainly until January. And then I can see them trying to put some pressure on at some point. Say, look, are you going to sign this thing or what? But he doesn't need to, does he? He could just follow the Trent blueprint, or he might be thinking he's going to follow the Van Dijk one and just wait till the very last minute and
they can't sell him now.
That's
the one thing we do know is they can't sell him now. That ship sailed. He's either going to sign or he's going to walk.
I mean, I think his power will lie. I think his power will lie in his performances. The thing that Van Dijk and Salah had is they were brilliant. They were just brilliant. There was no, they had the fans demanding they get what they want. The banner was saying, give them what they want. I mean, you can't just give people what they want, but there would have been a lot of disgruntlement had either of them not got those deals. And it was because of purely based on how brilliant they were. Now, if Konaté's form is indifferent or inconsistent, you probably find that a lot of people just ho-hum, do what you like, mate, stay, go, whatever. And he's probably, if he has the greatest season of his life and the fans are just singing "Iboo, Iboo" every week, well, he's going to have them on the side, and there will be that kind of pressure to get the deal done. Not necessarily Liverpool yield to pressure. I'm not saying Van Dijk and Salah got that because they yielded to fan pressure. They got those deals because they were worth those deals because of the performances. So it's up to Konaté. If he really has his heart set on getting a new deal for a salary that he thinks he's worth, produce the goods, and it might come. And if he's already got his heart set on going to Real Madrid, well, the ship sailed anyway, hasn't it? Yeah. And then he'll have the same, there's nothing you can do, is there? Doesn't matter how well he plays or how well he does. So you just get the most out of him, use him as well as you can for the rest of the season, and then bid them farewell, preferably with a title winner and Champions League medal. I am a little bit ho-hum, to be honest with you. I hope he plays well all season, and whatever he does at the end of it, not saying I'm particularly bothered because it's just the club to get him replaced. And if it's Gay, he'll just slot alongside, and then the Italian lads come in to be the long term again. And you'd imagine when Van Dijk's contract expired in 2 years' time, they'll move again. So Canate's got a great chance to be the real long term successor to Virgil van Dijk if he wants to be that. But he'll have to answer that question, and I'm sure he'll be asked it plenty of times, and I'm sure he'll duck and dive and not answer it.
Yeah.
The Canate that we saw on Sunday can have a 5-year deal on 300 grand a week, and the Canate we saw against Newcastle can go off to it. Yeah.
This is it, exactly. That's what, and that's basically it, isn't it? That's basically in a nutshell it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, boys. Anything else you want to add before we call this a night?
No, I think that's it.
Nice, good stuff. Well, I think we got a really good sort of overview of the incomings and outgoings from the window there, and some really unique perspective from Chris as well. Chris, it's been great having you on, mate. Really, really a pleasure to sort of explain some of this stuff to us who aren't privy to the ins and outs and all the different twists and turns of the window. So thanks so much for that. Come back on with us again soon, I hope.
Yeah,
and Dave, I suppose it was all right talking to you as well.
Yeah. We talk all the time, so.
Nice one. Good. Okay, well, we got the international break now, and no potential for any signings coming in. So the next you'll probably hear from us is after Burnley. So enjoy your weekends off. Okay, so we'll play you out with some updated predictions from the rest of the lads on the pod. We've asked them to also rate the window now it's closed. So take it away.
So the transfer window to me is an absolute 10 out of 10 for us. It's just sensational. Going and recruiting world-class players for all kinds of positions or potential world-class. I just think it's absolutely fantastic. They've been very clear about what they want, and they've gone and done it. The Gahey thing is a bit mad. Not particularly sold on him either way as a player. Thought it made sense, but I'm sure we'll go back and get him when the time's right. I love the fact that they're quite clearly future-proofing the team, and they're bringing in the big game match-winning players, the difference makers that will replace Mo as he begins to fade out, although I hope that won't be for a while. The Harvey one is mad. I'm pretty sure that is an opportunity to basically be given a clear run at Morgan Rogers for next summer. Why else would we let them pay us in a year's time and ask them for fuck all in return, but relatively speaking compared to other deals? And I wonder if they're also trying to keep Palace sweet for Adam Wharton next summer as well. Overall, brilliant. Just absolutely delighted with the whole thing. One tiny caveat on Isak. Yeah, that whole thing left a sour taste in the mouth, but fuck it, he's our player now. And also, when you look what happens to Gahey, it's quite clear that you need to do what he did in order to get the move that you want. So, yeah, Isak is a red, and fuck Newcastle.
This is definitely the most exciting transfer window that Liverpool have ever had. I'm really happy with what we've done. Isak has been my boy for a long time. That's a sensational signing. I'm really excited about Wirtz. We've got Kirk as, we've just addressed so many things that we needed to address. And whilst it's easy for me as someone who's naturally pessimistic to focus on not getting Guehi and not getting a wide forward who can predominantly play right-sided, we're in a great position. We've got a superb squad now. It's just a case of making sure that all of the parts that we've assembled fit nicely, and we're not trying to rag a square peg in a round hole, which is a bit of a worry with Ekitike on the left instead of through the middle. But at the end of the day, we've got a lot of football to play, and the more options we have, the better. What a sensational window. It could have been a 10, but I'm just going to give it a 9.5.
Now then, Reds. I'm going to give our transfer window an 8 out of 10, I think. 8.5 maybe out of 10. We've gone and got 2 players that you could possibly consider best in the world in their position, in Isak and Wirtz. I think that's not a crazy statement to say they're in that conversation. We've revamped the age profile of the team and could be set up for the next few years with real balls. We've sold well as well, I think, bringing in like 200 million quid. Most of those deals you look at good money. Maybe Harvey's a bit cheap, but other than that, I think they've done pretty well. I'd say it's only an 8 because 8.5 or something, because we've left ourselves with 4 big hitters and Rio and Chiesa, which is a bit of an issue maybe if you get an injury in there. And also because of the centre-back issue that we're after a centre-back, didn't get one, even though we brought the young lad in. So yeah, I wasn't that gutted that we didn't get Gahey, as people know. I think homophobia is a huge issue still in grassroots football, and I don't think it's too much to ask for role models to support the campaigns properly when those campaigns are aimed at combating it and making people feel welcome. So yeah, I'd say let's push to a 9. 8.59 I'll go for. And I don't need to change any of my pre-pod predictions because they all seem pretty much bang on. Arsenal too defensive, City easy to get at. I was going to win the league. Nice one.
I think it's a 9 out of 10 window, and I'd say Slot probably thinks much the same in the sense that he really wanted to get that deal over the line with Palace. And that's the only reason it's not a 10 for me, because everywhere else we've done really good business. Even with the outgoings, we've done really well in terms of the money we've got in to set off the big spending. Personal level, and lots of Reds feel like this, really disappointed to see Harvey go, but he was never in Slot's plans, and I think there's other stuff going on there in terms of Villa next summer, so we'll see how that plays out. In terms of predictions, I think we'll win it, especially given the start we've made, a difficult start. We've been really good. I'll stick with my top 4. I think City will be stronger in the weeks to come. And as for the bottom 3, I think Everton, based on what I've seen so far, look like they could be okay, but I've no idea who's going to go down. I think it could be a real dogfight down there this season.
If I'd have been offered this transfer window in May, I'd have probably given it like a 10 out of 10. Just because of like the sheer unexpectedness of who we brought in and stuff like that. I'm going to give it a 9.5 though. Just because I remember saying last year that I think we need another midfield option just to take the burden away from Gravenberch a little bit. I'm not too fussed on missing out on Gay because, I mean, I was saying when we were first linked with him that I think he's shit, but I've watched a bit more of him, pardon me, recently, and I'm going to say it here. I don't want to put it in the chat because I don't want my own words used against me, because that's the worst thing ever. But I think he's actually a good player. But it is what it is. We've missed out on him. We'll probably get him in January or next year. Yeah, so definitely happy with the window. Isak, Ekatike, either of them starts up front and it's immediate like exponential upgrade on Nunes. Sorry, Dave, but I don't think that's arguable. I would have liked maybe one more attacker possibly, but that's just probably being greedy. But yeah, the squad looks great for the most part anyway. Great start, so yeah, hopefully keep it going. In terms of like the predictions and stuff like that, I'm happy to see Spurs reverting to type at the weekend, and I can stop sweating on Thomas Frank not getting binned off now. That'll probably happen soon, maybe. Oh, and Man United 17th now.
So now that the transfer window has finally slammed shut and the tedium of deadline day is finally over and the most boring transfer saga ever is finally over, now that the dust has settled, I think I'm probably going to give Liverpool's window as it stands a 8 out of 10. Probably would have been a 9 if we got Guay through the door, just to give us that, top depth at the centre-back as well. So, yeah, 8 out of 10. Very exciting signings, obviously, at the top ends of the pitch in particular. I just wondered about the square pegs and round holes possibility in my eyes. I'm not saying I'll be right, but, Ekatike's made a great start, and I'm thinking the Isak transfer, he's going to play most of the games through the middle, obviously. So I just wonder where Ekatike fits in around that, because he just looks like an out-and-out number 9 to me. So yeah, it'll be interesting how that pans out. But you know, you can't deny it's been a great window in terms of incomings. I just hope that these players all gel and everything clicks into place. Obviously, we're going to score bagfuls of goals. I just wonder about the overall dynamics and chemistry of the team. So we'll have to wait and see. But very successful window, 8 out of 10, up the Reds.
In terms of spending, it's a 10 out of 10 window. I don't think we'll ever see us spend this much in a window again in our lifetimes. Well, maybe, I don't know. But in terms of personnel, I feel like we should have got that Gahey deal over the line, or at least another centre-back in. I still feel like we're light there. I don't really think we've got the Diaz replacement either, so I'm a bit concerned we might be a bit light there. But in terms of like the wow factor of it, the money spent, the players in, yeah, I think it's probably a 10 out of 10 window for that. You can't really deny it. In terms of what the squad's left with at the end, maybe an 8 out of 10, I would say. 8 out of 10. I'm not changing any of my predictions. I think we're probably the favourites to win the league, and rightfully so after spending so much money. So, yeah, exciting times. Let's see what happens.